Hebrews chapter 2, verses 14 and 15. That's where we've been for the last few weeks. No, it is a Christmas movie. It's a Christmas and Easter movie, actually. You'll find out. You'll find out if you watch them. So tonight we're going to end. It's been a short series. It's only been 3 weeks. Our Christmas series are always 3 to 4 weeks, just depending on how Christmas falls. This year we've got 3. This is our Christmas series for 2020, answering the question, why Christmas? And we've already answered it 2 different times. Number 1, because we are human. Why Christmas? Why do we need Christmas? Why do we have to have Christmas? Why is there Christmas? Because we are human. And then secondly, what we dealt with last week was to destroy the devil. Why Christmas? Why did Jesus come? To destroy the devil. So he came because we are human, and he came to destroy the devil. And tonight we are going to look at the third reason, which is to deliver his people, deliver his brothers and sisters from slavery of fear. So I'm going to read verses 14 and 15 once again, and then we'll jump right into it. Since therefore the children share in flesh and blood, he himself, Jesus, likewise partook of the very same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and deliver all those who through fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. So we have all 3 answers right there in those 2 verses on why Christmas. Of course, there's more than just those 3 answers, but those are the 3 answers in these 2 verses. Because we are human, to destroy the devil, and to deliver his brothers and sisters. The first point I want to talk about tonight are the recipients of the deliverance. Verse 15 says this, all those who, or all of those who. Now, here's the question I want to ask. Who are these people? Who are the all those who, or all of those? Because when we figure that out, we're going to have the answer as to who are the recipients of the deliverance. So once we figure out who the all those are, we will figure out who the recipients are. Now, some people respond to this by saying it's every single human being who has ever lived. Some people respond to the question, who are all of those? Who are the those? And some people answer that question with the answer that says everybody. It is every single person who has ever lived. Jesus died to destroy the devil and deliver everyone. Head for head. Everybody. But in order to find the answer to this question, we need to look at context. Because if Jesus, who is the God-man, is coming to accomplish the purposes of God, don't you think he would actually accomplish the purposes of God? Right? That's not your question. If Jesus comes to fulfill the purposes of God, then we would expect Jesus to fulfill the purposes of God. If God sent Jesus to deliver every single person head for head who has ever lived, then wouldn't we expect Jesus to deliver every single person who has ever lived head for head? Is that not what we should expect? If God the Father sent Jesus to save and deliver everyone, then what we should have is a deliverance of every single person who has ever lived. But we know from Scripture that's not the case. We know that people reject Jesus. We know that there are people who do not believe, who go to hell. And so if Jesus Christ came to save every single person, if he came to deliver every single person who has ever lived, and most people die and go to hell, then Jesus has not accomplished the purposes for which he came. We got a problem. We got God, if God the Father wants to deliver everybody, Jesus dies to deliver everybody, and most people die and go to hell, we have a problem, do we not? We have God trying to do something and failing to get done what he tries to do. If all human beings were supposed to be delivered, then why aren't they delivered? Why aren't they Christians? Why does anyone get separated from Jesus when they die? Whoever Jesus, listen to this very carefully, whoever Jesus delivers gets delivered. Okay? Whoever Jesus delivers on the cross, whoever Jesus pays for their deliverance, those people get delivered. They will come to Jesus and be saved. This is not difficult. Jesus came to die on the cross for sinners. Those sinners that He died for, those He paid for, those He delivers, He will deliver. They will come to Him and be saved. So, who are all of those? Who are these that are those who were delivered? Who is this specific group? Okay, now I want you to look with me. It's a little bit of interaction. I want you to look at verse 14 of chapter 1. Look at verse 14 of chapter 1. And somebody raise their hand and tell me, from verse 14, what indication can we get as to who these people are that Jesus is going to deliver? Who is it that He delivers? From verse 14. Yes.
The ministering spirits.
Well, the ministering spirits are angels. You would have known that if I could have read the whole first chapter to you. Are they not all ministering spirits sent out to serve? So the angels are the ministering spirits who are sent out to serve for the sake of who? Those who will inherit salvation. So there are a group of people who will inherit salvation. Now look, chapter 2, verse 10. Who are the group mentioned in verse 10? If you get it wrong, it's no big deal. Take a shot. Verse 10. Read verse 10. Who are the ones in verse 10? What does it say, Travis? What does it say? I'll give you a hint. In bringing many what? In bringing many sons to glory. So now we have this reference that these people who are inheriting salvation are sons of God. Look at verse 11. So they're sons of the Father and daughters of the Father. Look at verse 11. Who is it in verse 11? He is not ashamed to call them what? Braden, look it up. Verse 11. He is not ashamed to call them what? Brothers. Now, this makes sense, right? If they're sons and daughters of God the Father, then Jesus is not ashamed to call them what? Brothers and sisters, because He is the Son of God. So, those that are going to inherit salvation are His brothers and sisters. Look at verse 13. Jesus is speaking here, and He says, behold, I and the who? The children God has given me. So, and remember we read John 6 the first week? We read John 6, and we said there are a group of people that have been given to Jesus. Jesus said, all that the Father gives me will come to me, and I will lose nothing of that which the Father has given me. Here we know that these that are being given to Jesus are children of God and brothers and sisters to Jesus. Verse 14 is where we spent a lot of our time in the very first one, where it says, since therefore the children share in flesh and blood. Since these that are going to inherit eternal life, since these children, since these brothers and sisters are going to inherit eternal life, Jesus had to become a human being. And also, look at verse 16. For surely it is not angels that he helps. He doesn't help he doesn't need to come and save the ministering spirits. But he helps the who? Look at verse 16. Who does he help in verse 16? Yeah. The offspring of Abraham. Now, if you were just to read that completely out of New Testament context, you would think, oh, he's just come to save Jewish people. Right? Isn't that the offspring of Abraham? Jews? And you would think, well, that's it. He's just come to save the Jewish people. But when you get to the New Testament, Paul is very clear on who the offspring of Abraham are. It is not people that are blood from Israel. It's not, hey, I have the blood of an Israelite, so therefore I am the offspring of Abraham. Paul comes along and says, hang on one second. The Bible says Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Abraham had faith in God, and God credited that faith as righteousness to his account. In covenant with God. Abraham became the father of the covenantal people of God. What Paul says in the New Testament is, it's not from blood that you become an offspring of Abraham. You become an offspring of Abraham if you have faith in God the way Abraham had faith in God. We who believe in Jesus are the offspring of Abraham. There is only one family of God. Those who put their faith in Jesus Christ. That's it. So, all of those in verse 15, or the group that is called all those who, appear to be a group of people who will inherit salvation, come to faith, who are children of God, brothers and sisters of Christ, and who have been given to Jesus for Jesus to die for, destroy the devil for, and deliver them. So even though, in the New Testament, and even here, they are being referred to in their unsaved state, subject to slavery and fearful, in our context, they were predestined to be saved by Jesus. And that is why we can go ahead and be called children and brothers and sisters, because we will inherit salvation. So, the recipients of the deliverance are those who were given to Jesus for Jesus to die for, and they come to faith in Jesus Christ and inherit salvation. Here's the next thing I want you to see. The reason for the deliverance. I want to talk about the word deliverance. I want to talk about this idea of deliverance. Where is Paul, who wrote this, getting the idea of deliverance from? Why is he choosing the word deliverance? He could choose other ideas about what Jesus did for us, but here, well, not Paul here necessarily, because I don't think Paul wrote Hebrews, but Paul uses the same language of delivered. Here, the writer of Hebrews is writing and using this language of delivered. What's behind this? What's the reason for it? Now, when we think of deliverance, we usually think of someone who is in prison, or someone who is in captivity, or someone who is enslaved, right? When we think of someone being delivered, we think of someone who is in prison, they're bound up, they're captive, they're chained, they're slaves, and now they're being delivered and set free. And that's certainly proper in this case. We were in slavery, and we needed to be delivered. Jesus destroys the devil on the cross. That's what we talked about last week. The cross was a victory. Jesus destroyed the devil on the cross. He overthrew the dominion of Satan and vanquished his power and over death. And he vanquished the power of the devil and death and delivered God's people. Now, in the Old Testament, there's a couple examples that I want to use. The first is Abraham. So Abraham had a nephew. Anybody know Abraham's nephew's name? Lot. Abraham's nephew's name was Lot. And Lot chose to go settle in the land of Sodom. This was a city that was known for its wickedness, but it was wealthy and rich. And Lot chose to go to Sodom and to live there. Well, his time living there, an enemy comes and attacks the people of Sodom and take the people of Sodom captive and take Lot and his family captive. So Abraham hears about his family being taken captive, about his nephew being taken captive. So Abraham gathers up his men, okay, all of his servants, all of his men that have been, who are trained to defend his property and his people and his land, and they go to Sodom and they destroy those who had taken Sodom into captivity. Second example I want to give is when King David had multiple wives, which he shouldn't have, but he had multiple wives, and King David had tons of kids, and at some point, the Amalekites, who were always the enemies of Israel, they come and they kidnap and take captive many of David's wives and children. So David rallies up his army, he goes and destroys the Amalekites, and that's the end of that. Now, my question for you is this. Did Abraham and did King David just destroy those enemies just for destruction's sake? Was their goal just, you know what, let's just go destroy those people? Was that their goal? Just destruction for destruction's sake? No. What was the goal? What was the goal? To deliver and to save those who had been taken captive. So, Abraham wants to go deliver Lot and his family. King David wants to go and deliver his wives and children. Okay? But I want to give you one more example. There is only one deliverance in the Old Testament that Israel, when Israel hears the word deliverance, their mind is going to go to one thing immediately. Anybody want to take a guess what that would be? What would be the deliverance that Israel thinks of immediately? I'll give you a few hints. They celebrate it every year at Passover. Okay?
Oh, the slaves that were freed from Egypt.
Yeah, the Exodus. They celebrated that deliverance every single year. They had a huge celebration party every single year to celebrate the deliverance of 400 years of slavery. They had been slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and God, through Moses, delivers his people out of Egyptian bondage and freed. Guess what had to happen for that ultimate freedom to take place? Who had to be destroyed? Pharaoh. Pharaoh had to be destroyed. And Pharaoh was destroyed. The sea parted and Israel crossed on dry land, and then Pharaoh brought his army in there, and God caused the Red Sea to then collapse upon Pharaoh and his men, and Pharaoh and all of them were killed. So here's what the New Testament writers understood. Okay? They understood that the Exodus, the Old Testament Exodus, was a picture or a type of a new Exodus or a greater Exodus that was coming. Okay? In fact, you've got 400 years where God doesn't speak from the end of Malachi to the New Testament, right? We call them the silent years. There's 400 years where God doesn't raise up any prophets. And we actually have writings they're called the intertestamental writings. We have writings where Jewish people were still writing during this period of time. And do you know one of the things they wrote about? A new Exodus. We need a new Exodus. We need our Messiah to come and deliver us and bring a new Exodus, a greater Exodus. The New Testament writers understood that this new Exodus would come through the Messiah. So much like Pharaoh was destroyed and Israel was delivered for 400 years of slavery, so now Jesus destroys the ultimate Pharaoh, which is who? Who's the ultimate Pharaoh? The devil. And the devil, as the ultimate Pharaoh, is destroyed by Jesus at the cross in order to deliver his people from slavery, to rescue them. Jesus didn't destroy the devil simply for destruction's sake. It wasn't like, you know what, I just want to destroy the devil. Hate that dude. Used to be with me up here in heaven and wanted to be like us. He wanted to be part of the Godhead. Didn't like the way that we made him, so I just want to get rid of that dude. If that was the case, then guess what? Couldn't he just done that right off the bat? As soon as Satan sinned, God could have said, let's just destroy this dude right now. Gone.
Yeah.
That wasn't the point. The point was, I want to destroy the devil in order that I can deliver my people. It wasn't destruction for destruction's sake. It was to destroy the devil in order to deliver the people. It wasn't let's kill Pharaoh just to kill Pharaoh. No, it's Pharaoh needs to die in order for my people to be delivered. Abraham didn't say, you know what, I just want to go kill those people who took over Sodom. King David he wasn't this bloodthirsty king who just wanted to go kill people. No, they took his wife and his kids and he wanted them back. He wanted to deliver them. That is what God does. A new exodus. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 3:3, do you know who Jesus is called? He is called greater than Moses. He's the new Moses, delivering his people out of bondage. This is what the writer of Hebrews has in mind when he writes about this destruction and deliverance. So the reason for the deliverance is that we, as the children, the brothers, the sisters, those who will inherit salvation, we were enslaved and we needed to be delivered. And then lastly tonight, I want to talk about the reality of the deliverance. I got 3 R's in here, guys. Impressive. So impressive. What is it that we have been specifically delivered from in this context? Now, I could take you to Romans 6 and I can say, well, it's slavery of sin. I can take you to other passages and it's slavery to other things. But here specifically, what is it that we have been delivered from? Verse 15 says this, that the children were through the fear of death were subject to lifelong slavery. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the fear of death. Listen, the fear of death is something that mankind has had since sin. A fear of death. It's something that mankind has always experienced, and it's something that man is experiencing today. It is the most powerful fear that a human being can have. In fact, we are so afraid of death, we don't even like thinking about it. We don't even like thinking about death. We don't like thinking about the fact that this could be my last day. We'd rather just push it out of our mind and think, I'm living to 95. And you know what? I don't even want to think about being I don't want to think about having to be in a nursing home. We just got to push it all away and not think about it because there is this fear that we have. We don't like to think about it. It causes, and in fact, when people think about fear, it causes them to think about death. It causes them to do some crazy stuff. Fear causes human beings to act irrationally and the fear of death causes people to act irrationally, and so we would just rather not think about it. But we need to understand how the Bible views death, or how the Bible speaks about death. Death is not just something that is an event waiting to happen. Okay? That's not how the Bible speaks about death. It's not just an event that's awaiting us. It is a power that rules over us and is wielded as a weapon by the devil. Okay? Death is not just an event waiting for us. It is a power over us wielded by the devil in fear. The Bible pictures death as something that's coming for us, denying our souls peace and contentment. Now, I want to point out 3 things about the fear of death. Why is death something that people fear? Number 1, it means the end of life. It means the end of the joys and the experiences and the loved ones. It means an end to this life. Number 2, it means the beginning of an unknown. We don't like that. We fear death because we don't know what's waiting on the other side. And so people don't want to die because what's going to happen when I die? And then third, this is something that most people don't realize and certainly don't want to think about. There comes the judgment of God. Death brings the judgment of God. So death brings this kind of slavery of fear. And this slavery of fear is something that we need to be set free from. We need as human beings to be set free from this fear that enslaves us about our ultimate destiny and what's going to happen when we die. And this is exactly what Jesus has done. Jesus became a human being in order to die. And on his death at the cross, he defeated the devil and death. He delivered God's people from the slavery of the fear of death. Think about how Christians now look at death. Once you become a Christian, your view of death changes. Here's why. God's people now view death as a passageway to being in the presence of Almighty God. It is now a door that Christians walk through in order to get something better. The fear of death gets taken away. I don't have to fear death anymore because when I die, I now go into the presence of the Lord. Paul says to be absent from this body is to be present with the Lord. So I don't fear the death. Now, do I fear of like how I'm going to die? Well, yeah, that can still be a something you think about. Like, I sure don't want to get hit by an 18-wheeler, stand in the middle of the street. You know what I'd rather do? I'd rather go to sleep and just not wake up. Right? Like, we think that way, but the actual death itself, not how that death comes, but the death itself is no longer something that Christians fear. When Jesus died on the cross, he took sin upon himself. He endured the wrath of God that we deserve. Look at what 2 Timothy 1:10 says. You have it in your notes. Listen to this. It says, Jesus Christ, who abolished death and brought life and immortality. Listen to this. When Jesus died for you, Christian, on the cross, he made it so that you'll live forever.
That's right.
You will live forever. And this body at some point is going to stop. I don't know how it's going to happen, but at some point this body is going to stop. But my spirit is going to go be with Jesus. And one day Jesus is going to come back and bring my spirit back, and he's going to resurrect my body, and he's going to give me a brand new spiritual body. Now, it'll still be physical, but it'll be powered by the Spirit now, and my spirit is going to go inside of that brand new body, and I will dwell on the earth forever and ever and ever. Death has lost its sting. Death has lost its power. Jesus is the champion from heaven who has defeated our hellish enemy and gave us victory over the cross, over death. We do not have to be afraid anymore. For the Christian, death does not mean judgment, but blessing. It does not mean being separated from God's love, but actually brings us into a greater experience with God's love. We're not removed from the presence of God when we die. We enter into it like never before. So while it is true we must die one day, death no longer has any power over us. And one day we will rise from the dead, and the effects of death will be gone forever. Notice, I will still die. I will experience, my body is going to experience the effects of death. But the power of death is gone. And one day, the effects of death will even be gone. Imagine what that day is going to be like. So Jesus has delivered a specific group of people from that fear of death, that slavery of being fearful of dying and standing before God. We have been delivered from that and set free. So let's talk about Harry Potter for a minute. Now, Harry Potter, I've read the books all the way through one time, seen movies, I don't know how many times. When you read the book, you get a lot of stuff that you don't get in the movies, which is always the case for books, and that's why books are better than movies. Harry Potter's mother sacrificed herself, gave herself up for Harry when Harry was a baby. Voldemort, who at the time was trying to get rid of anybody that opposed him. And he knew that there was a prophecy about a baby that would be born and that might undo him. So he goes and he finds this baby, and he's going to kill Harry as a baby. But instead, his mother jumps in front of Harry and takes the was it called the death curse, or is that what it's called, right? The killing curse, takes that upon herself. But in doing so, she has protected Harry for 16 years. Her sacrifice protected Harry's life. Harry couldn't die. As long as that place was called his home and he lived with his aunt had the same blood as his mother, and so he was protected. Harry gets to the place where, I think it's in book 4, if I'm not mistaken, where Voldemort, who is this weird baby demon-like thing, it's just weird. And they put him in a pot. But they take blood from Harry and they put it in the pot, therefore putting Harry's blood inside of Voldemort, but that also powers Voldemort, and Voldemort with the spell becomes powerful, and then you begin seeing him like that with the body. The problem is that he has now Harry's blood flowing in him. And now that he has Harry's blood flowing in him, as long as he's alive, Harry can't be killed. Most people have all these weird ideas of why Harry didn't stay dead when he did the killing curse and Harry didn't die. People have all these ideas of, well, he had the three, the cloak, the wand, and the Deathly Hallows. The cloak, the wand, and the resurrection stone. He had those so he couldn't die. No, the reason why he couldn't die is because his blood was in Voldemort, and that's the blood that his mother sacrificed her life for. And here's what's interesting. I love the statement that Voldemort says. The boy who lived come to die. And I'm like, that's Christmas, y'all. Yeah. But that's Christmas. The boy who has now taken on humanity has come to die. And Voldemort performs the killing curse, and technically he is killed, but not all the way, and he goes to like a place where, he's going to get sent back. But here's something interesting. Why did Harry die? He died because he was told, if you come and sacrifice yourself, I won't kill everybody else. So Harry was willing to go die for all of his friends back at Hogwarts. And the moment that killing curse was put on Harry, guess what just happened to all his friends? They just got protected. He sacrificed himself, and now they can't die anymore. And here's the point. If you were to ask the writer of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, if you were to ask her, what is your story about? Here's what she says. It's about sacrifice. It's about love and sacrifice. It's about giving yourself for other people. Harry's mother did it, and Harry did it. And what's interesting is everyone Harry comes in contact with, right, that he's friends with, guess what they all end up doing? They all end up sacrificing for each other. They all end up giving for each other. And I just want to point this out, just as an analogy. Jesus was the boy who came to die, and he sacrificed himself to deliver his brothers and sisters. And now, because we have experienced one who gave himself so that we may live, now we are supposed to be sacrificing ourselves for other people. We're supposed to be giving of ourselves so that others may live. So why Christmas? I think we know better now after these 3 weeks. I think we know better than we did when we started. I hope that we can have a better understanding of Merry Christmas than we did when we started.